reminder of we don't want to do that again. We're not going to get hit by oil again. And so the reactor development really went really fast at that point. They increased it. Also, they talk a lot about to not develop the entire fuel cycle would risk losing it, which I think is quite different than a lot of the other countries, in the US and other places in Western Europe that gave up on closed cycle programs. The nuclear policy making is dominated by METI, the Ministry of Economy, Technology, and Industry. Science and Technology Agency did a lot of the R&D. Ministry of Foreign Affairs does negotiations, but it's really METI that drives the planning and execution of the policy. And they work with the utilities, namely Tokyo Electric Power, Kansai Electric Power, to convince local governments and local communities to host these reactors in the facilities. There seems to be very little input from the public on this. It's not debated in the Diet. The members of parliament do not really vote on it. Nor does there seem to be a national anti-nuclear movement. So it kind of comes from top down. And all that's built into this bureaucratic inertia, the legal inertia, where all the fuel has to go to Rokasho legally, and then it'll go to whatever the final disposal plan is, which wasn't clear yet. But they also, I don't think, and this really hurt in the accident, the lack of a strong prime minister. Because all the policy has been made within the ministries, it wasn't clear who takes charge when something really wrong happened. And I think that the public was really shaken by this. This thing happened and we didn't even know this was a possibility. And alternatives were not really given much consideration. Again, this has been done for domestic reasons. Safety was a big thing in the domestic debate. I think a lot of times in the US when growth of nuclear power, we talk about security, proliferation risks, safeguards. That doesn't seem to be as big in Japan. It's been the safety. And so when this accident hit, again, it's a real shaking in the confidence of it. And a lot of the other proliferation concerns seem to be diplomatic challenges. Real quick on the accident, because I think one of the other speakers will address it. Essentially, the earthquake hit, the reactors shut down as they were supposed to. Backup cooling systems came on, and this has to happen because the reactors continue to produce heat even after shutting down. The tsunami exceeded the seawall, knocked out the backup systems, and so then you had a station blackout with nothing cooling the reactors. The core started to melt, you had a pressure buildup, hydrogen gas buildup, electrical valves could not open, they could not vent the gas in time, so it exploded. You had 3 hydrogen explosions, which led to and then they were venting gas to try and get that pressure down. And then it was just real emergency. They were pumping seawater into the cores, trying to get it cool so that you wouldn't have it melting further through or more explosions occurring. And before I look into projecting the future a little bit, the basic energy plan that they were working on came out in June of 2010. Their goals seem pretty clear, pretty good. I don't think those are very contentious. Of course, they had plans to build 14 new reactors by 2030. That's been canceled. I also find this last quote to be possibly more prophetic than they realized at the time. That Japan will fundamentally change its energy supply and demand system by 2030. The accident seems to very, very dictate this now. This accident was a status quo changing event. They now need to decide about the safety inspections of when to restart the reactors. Otherwise, it's a lot of electricity that is not online right now. I think they need to effectively engage the public. We've seen public protests over this, large demonstrations in Tokyo. So I think they need to engage more effectively with that when making a new energy policy. And I think it's also a time to explore new options, all options. That it doesn't just have to be a closed fuel cycle, that it doesn't have to be just nuclear, that they can look at everything now. In particular with the US, the Nuclear Cooperation Agreement, the 123 agreement, expires in 2018. They were concerned that they wouldn't be able to get a second reprocessing plant. I think even that should be reconsidered right now to see whether that's really necessary. A nuclear phase-out has been mentioned by a couple politicians. Of course, Prime Minister Khan said it in the summer. I think a lot of people didn't take him seriously. Then Prime Minister Noda, in his first national address, said that they would not support building new reactors. In a cabinet white paper released at the end of October, said that they will basically phase it out. That the reactors online now, they will go their lifetime and then be shut down. So, and I think we will talk about maybe what they can do. And what does the public think? The most recent survey, at least I've seen, October 28 from NHK, it's been a sort of a slow increase, 24% favor abolishing it, 42% favor decreasing, whereas this very small, basically about 25% maintaining or increasing the nuclear sector. So, and that's all my time. Thank you. Sure. Are there any questions? Oh, I didn't. Excellent.
Okay.
Yeah, anybody? Yeah.
Hey Jim, this is the second time I've seen your presentation. You had it up at the PhD conference,
Yeah.
and I wanted to thank you for it. One of the things that I've been considering ever since your presentation was I'm Jeff Reynolds. I'm a second-year MALD candidate here. One of the things that I've been wondering about ever since your presentation was the innovation of a new physics or drastic changes to experimental nuclear technologies such as fusion, a lot of stuff going on in the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and the idea that has been proposed by Professor Fine over at MIT is the U.S. nuclear agencies are moving to smaller reactors that are definitely safer. If there is a game changer within the nuclear industry, where you can provide a stable or nuclear fusion form of generation, what do you think the impact could be? And if you could provide comment on some of the initiatives that are taking place in the experimental domain, I'd appreciate it.
Sure, sure. Yeah, some of the things going on now, fusion, there's been progress. It does not seem anywhere close to commercialization. That doesn't mean that there can't be a breakthrough. Fusion would be a huge game changer everywhere around the world. But I think it's a stretch to count on it happening anytime soon. And it'd be very hard for policy planners to include it. Japan did have it in their policy, but sort of this nebulous thing that'll happen way in the future. The small modular reactors, my opinion, I agree they sound safer, but they have not been commercialized and they have not been operated. So there is also that, we have to believe that the engineering on it is right, or that the models for it. I don't really see either. I don't see the small modulars being sort of the solution for Japan. A lot of the things that they bring, I don't know if they apply to Japan. As far as these being, the reactors that they have now are their baseline power producers. The small modulars aren't necessarily meant to be powering, say, Tokyo metro area, which is this huge, densely populated area. And so I'm not convinced that. But I would say, as far as any sort of game changer in nuclear technology, in my opinion, the Japanese, right now, the talk of phase out, I think a lot has come from the public reaction to the accident. And I think it also, this lack of their political leadership style of lately changing prime ministers every year, it's hard to make a bold initiative with that. And I think that, so right now they're kind of going with what the public seems to want, which is this phase out and reduce dependence. But at some point, maybe next summer, they're going to reach a time where none of their reactors are online, or maybe just a handful. There's going to be severe or significant